Today's guest is someone who's not just built companies, he's built exits. Phil Neal took Neobex Medical from zero to over $30 million in EBITDA, led a bold 8-figure sale, and didn't stop there. He's now a strategic advisor, investor, and founder of Courage Compass, where he coaches entrepreneurs through the mental and tactical battles of building something that lasts. He's deeply involved in AI, biotech, and defense technology. But more than that, he's someone who talks straight about the emotional roller coaster of being a founder. This conversation is about scaling up, selling smart, and staying sane while doing it. So let's dive in with Phil Neal. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Welcome to another episode of 10,000 Miles. And today, I have Phil Neal with me. Phil, how are you?
I'm great, and you?
I'm doing really, really well today. Thank you for asking. Hey, Phil, for the audience, would you, in your own words, how about you introduce yourself to the crowd here?
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I discovered I was an entrepreneur because that wasn't the plan originally. I first studied to be a high school teacher. And in the process of being both a university student and poor, I discovered sales. And I was really good at sales. And so for the first time, I started to have a bit more income, started to be interested in real estate investing, bought a few rental properties. And by the time I graduated, I felt a calling into business, that I had something to discover about myself along that path. And so I began studying to be a full-time real estate agent remotely. I got a job in the beer industry as a B2B sales rep. And I was still teaching during the evenings. And so at some point I decided I need to cut something, got promoted in my sales job, and I just went all in. And so worked for about 2.5 years in the beer industry, then discovered the pharmaceutical industry, worked for Bayer for a couple of years, then in medical device for Roche, eventually back to pharma with psychiatrist, selling antidepressant and antipsychotic. And at that point, I could see the pattern that I was just not happy with farming. I just wanted to, the rush of the beginning, the creative process, getting the edge. And once I'm rewarded for my effort, I wanted another challenge. And so I thought maybe that's because I'm an entrepreneur. And I joined a group of friends. We started a business on the side. We were acting as a purchasing department for local health centers that were too small to have someone in charge of that specifically. And because nobody was really in charge of that, it was just nurses most of the time, they were getting ripped off. So we helped them save maybe 50%. And we got paid through the savings, around a third of the savings we kept for ourselves. Okay. And so the model was lean. Nobody invested any money. Just 5 guys, equal shares, traditional, typical first mistake of entrepreneurship. No sense of fairness and equity in share allocation and roles. And eventually it was just me and my integrator partner, who's an accountant, that were doing most of the business. So when COVID hit, we lost our suppliers because we were just reselling. And so at that point, we were about to fail because we had to cut all the new customers we had won over the past 6 months, since we couldn't buy more than the average of the last 12 months of purchase order. And so at this point, there was already kind of an internal frustration over workload, but then I decided to push through again and eventually find my way to pivot the model. And in a nutshell, we went into nitrile glove, and I was able to scale the business to 70 million in revenue in 8 months. And that gave me my wings to become a full-time entrepreneur, which I've been ever since.
Fantastic. Where'd you grow up?
In Sherbrooke, and I'm still here in Quebec, Canada.
That's fantastic.
I'm French Canadian, yeah.
That's good. Was all of your business in Canada, or were you put south of the border doing business in the States, elsewhere on the globe?
Yeah, I've mostly been in international business. So Neobex was the glove business. And so first customer we have was the government of Quebec, but then we won Sacramento County in California. We won a big HealthPro, which is a big purchasing group in Ontario. We had a distribution hub in Mexico. we have an office for some reason in Rwanda in Africa, and so that was the beginning of my international journey. And I would say a lot of my investment nowadays are in Thailand.
Oh, really? Fantastic. I love Thailand. I've not been there, but I do a lot of reading and research about the ways of Thailand, and I will definitely be checking a few boxes and taking visits to Thailand someday. It's funny. I have some friends and colleagues that attempted the same type of opportunistic uh, piece in COVID. How do I get supplies to the places that need them? And somebody I know very well tried the whole nitro glove thing, didn't have the success you had. But
Yeah.
you had the experience through the buying and the reselling and the clients and knew where to go. This person was coming in cold and had a multi-million-dollar nitro glove deal ready to go with like another country. And it ran into snags, shipping, delivery, customs, all these other crazy things. But I know working internationally, you had to overcome a lot of those things. So you grew up in Quebec. You have siblings.
I have a brother and a sister.
Where do you
I'm
fit in
younger.
that mix? You're
I'm
both
the
younger?
oldest. Yeah, I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. You're the big
My
guy.
brother is also an entrepreneur. He has a biotechnology
Really?
company called Tatum Bioscience, and they have
Okay.
patents for curing cancer. Very
Oh,
smart guy.
wow.
Yeah.
What kind of cancer?
It's I have it in French. It's
Yeah.
the colon. what's
Okay.
the word in English? Like the gastrointestinal
Oh,
cancer.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. The colon cancer.
Exactly. So you see,
Yeah.
sometimes I
Okay.
just put on an English accent and I can
Well,
get
hey,
away with it.
what's pretty good is I don't speak a freaking lick of French, and somehow I caught that the colon. Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
le colon. It's the same.
I love it. I
That's
love
how
it.
I got
I
my
love it.
Spanish too. Just put a Spanish spin on a French word.
That's good. That's that's great. So, oldest child brings a lot of responsibilities. Sounds like the rest of the crew is coming up and doing well. What was it like growing up in Quebec?
So my parents were great parents, but they weren't educated, so they didn't have access to a lot of opportunities. My father doesn't have a high school degree, had a rough life. My father was raised in English, but I was raised in French because my mother is the daughter of a French immigrant, so very French. And so in Quebec, it's very peaceful. It's a small city. We were about 100,000 when I was born, and now we're maybe 180,000. So it's
Oh, wow.
getting bigger. There's a lot of life here, but it's a university city. So two university,
Yes.
one French, one English, two college, one French, one English, a bunch of high schools. My children go to English school now, but it's
Okay.
funny because Quebec is a drop of French water in the ocean of the English North America, or at least US and Canada. But then at the micro scale, it's the reverse. So the English community is a drop of English speaking people in a sea of French people in my region. And so now that I'm on the governing board of the school district, the English school district, I get to see the reverse situation where access to resources is hard because you don't have as many English speaking social workers, specialized resources like that. So yeah, I'm going on a tangent, but
No, I like it.
Yeah,
That's neat. So was French your first language?
Yes.
It was. Okay. When did you start learning English?
So we learned it in elementary school. We started there.
Okay.
And I was always in enriched programs. And as I made my way into the business world, well, first of all, every entertainment I listened to is in English, and with my father, it was always the case as well. That's how I picked up most of my English, just watching TV with my father when I was younger, and eventually just being in business. You have to learn it. So I love the English language. It's much more straightforward than the French language, especially when it comes to writing it down.
I had a friend who he's accomplished a lot of things, but one of the things he's very accomplished in is classical guitar. And he used to study with this very renowned classical guitarist out of Germany. And even early into his marriage, but well before his marriage, he would go to Germany in the summer for 1 month. And he did it, I think, for 8 or 9 years in a row. And he'd stay at Hubert's house and he'd study classical guitar. But Hubert was this like bigger than life character, and people came from all over Europe to study with Hubert, but for some reason he loved my friend Tony. And obviously German was first language for him, but he spoke very good English. And people were coming from all over where English was a second or a third language. But it was sort of the place that they all met. And so after all the years of going to Germany, Tony picked up like 5 words in German. I mean, it was just, and he said, Vic, I'd have an easier time teaching all of Germany English than I would in me learning German. He said,
Yeah.
and then he married a Thai woman from Thailand who is definitely English as a second language. And he said the same thing. I'd have an easier time teaching all of Thailand English than I would learning Thai. I mean, those languages are different because the alphabet is
Yes.
just completely different. I mean, I get texts from a Thai massage therapist and I tell her all the time, Sandy, just text me in Thai. Because she's trying to translate. Like, I got a better time of hitting translate on it and letting Google do its thing. And I get it because sometimes, and God love her, she's fantastic. English not coming out so good. And she's been here 20 years. It's been a challenge for her. But,
it's going to become less of a challenge with smart glasses now. With the AI implemented in glasses that automatically translate. We're approaching an era where former barriers to connection are going to be lowered.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the AI products I sell is a product called Crisp.ai, KRISP. Crisp are you familiar with Crisp at all?
I think I've seen it, but
Crisp does a couple of things. They started out with bidirectional noise cancellation. So if you and I were on a Zoom call and I was a contact center agent, you were a customer, or I was even in a contact center, as long as I had Crisp loaded on my side, it would AI would be used to kill bidirectional background noise. So our conversation would sound just like this. Then they moved into accent neutralization, and they started in the Philippines and then moved into India. And I'm going to send you a demo when this is all done. You'll love it. You invoke it, you click it on. And if I'm from India and can speak English, but have a very heavy accent, you sound like you're in the States. I mean, it's incredible. And it's evolved. I mean, when it first came out, you're like, maybe I'm speaking to a bot. Now it's like, it's perfect. And it retains the character and the natural sound of the human's voice rather than inserting a voice pack on it. So I could sound like Mary or Joe or Bob. And then the next thing that they've rolled out this year was a bidirectional interpreter and language translator. So you say something in French and immediately I hear it in English. I say something back in English and then you hear it in French. And what they do is they kill the original voice in the ears. So you really are just hearing when I say it to you in French and I'm just hearing when you reply back in English. So that sounds pretty normal. And it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I want that to be a wearable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I want to walk around France or Germany or anywhere and just hear everything in English. And then, I'll install a little chip in my throat and then I can speak the language as well. But yeah, my daughter married a guy whose family is from Colombia and Mexico. And, one of the grandmas doesn't speak any English. She's a beautiful, great woman, heart of gold. You could just feel the love pouring out of this woman. And she said at a dinner one night, God is so great. I just still don't understand why he made so many languages.
Yeah.
Because we were all having trouble communicating,
Yeah.
And I said, it's the greatest question ever asked. It was great.
My perspective on that is that, so language carries culture. And so that's the beauty of language, because it really gives you, so if it's the case that you cannot have a full lens of truth with just your own mind and you need others, well, it's the same thing for culture. I think many cultures, we have our own lens. And then by learning words that don't translate, it means they capture a human experience that is not captured in the language you're using. So
yeah, this is true because the interpretations are different and the meaning and you're right. The cultural aspects of it are super important. Hey, I want to jump into the meat and potatoes of why I asked you to come on today. It is no easy task navigating being an entrepreneur. And no matter how you got there, and I applaud the way you got there, and I certainly understand it, you're not too dissimilar from most entrepreneurs I talk to. I'd say 2 out of 10 say they came out of some schooling or a thing where they just said, I'm going to start a business and I know exactly what I'm doing. Maybe 1 out of 10. The rest are like, I went out and learned. I did a batch of great things. I had to go figure out what I didn't want to do. And then the light bulb came on and I knew
Yeah.
this is where I was going to be. But, as you were building your first company, how'd you come up with the idea? How did you select your partners? You kind of snickered a little bit about having 5 equal partners and maybe have some regrets about that decision. Let's unpack some of those things. Like
Sure.
when let's say we get past the spot where you decide you were going to do. How'd you pick that industry and that business? Did you just identify a gap and you want to fill it, or how did this come about?
So it started with so I discovered podcasts just a little bit before I discovered entrepreneurship. And so I kind of stumbled into a podcast that had an entrepreneur guest that communicated in a well-rounded manner that was able to make a bridge between how I conceptualize my life and then entrepreneurship. So it wasn't just business hustle. It was more a meaningful experience.
Yeah.
And from there, I got curious. And so I started to absorb so much content. And eventually I found, it was a time where the 4-hour work week was being released. And so I
Yeah, I
found
remember
Tim
that.
Ferriss, and I have discovered about outsourcing, Upwork, and all of these websites. And I thought, all right, well, I really resonated with the social impact enterprise model. Tom Shoes was a new business at the time where you buy one, they give one kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I thought that is closer to my values. So I want to try that. I went to Upwork. I hired a VA in the Philippines to make me a website. And I just burned $3,000 on nothing because I didn't understand
Okay.
enough. And so the first thing I learned is I don't know enough to do it alone. So even though I was successful as a business development, territory manager, all of that, it's too many unknowns business. So I looked around. I knew this physician who was one of my customer. We connected because he was business oriented. And he told me about this little startup. He just started a month ago where he had one elderly center where he was giving care that they started to purchase for them, and they had just made $3,000. And he said, "Look, we need someone with a business mind with us. Why don't you join us?" And so I kind of figured I cannot do it alone. This seems like there's a product market fit. It's in a field that I understand because I'm working in health. Why not just try it out? And so it really kind of just happened like that. They told me if you make I think it's $50,000 in revenue. So like a milestone approach until I get equal share as them, which took a month or something. And then we were all equal share. But originally we were 4.
Okay.
And so we were 4. We at all equal share. There was a physician, a physical therapist, an accountant, me. And later on, someone with a management background came along. And that was part of the problem. So I'll get to that. But we had all 24.5% each. And so only me and the accountant were actually working on the company. And so when we brought it up, they decided to put in place a commission agreement. And so we kind of patched the problem. And then when we scaled to 70 million and we made like 35 million gross profit, then they onboarded the 5th person because he was always supposed to be there. He was just part of their business. So he had share in the business because he owned the holding company, I would say. And so at that point, he came along. So I kept my 25. They shared the 75%, the rest. I know it's a lot of details, but that was the origin of the conflict. So what happened is because I had now more shares than them, then the physician in the group became very, very greedy, I would say. And he didn't want to, he wanted to abolish the commission. He wanted me to have the same shares as them. And so that created an internal conflict that became very, very toxic. And that actually led me to my exit, because I originally made a partial exit as a compromise so that we all have 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I didn't believe it made sense, because we were still rising quite a bit and I thought we would
Yeah.
grow much more than that. That was my way to compromise and buy peace. But then it didn't work. And a year later, it was still not happy with that solution. And so I eventually just sold everything and went away.
Okay. So pick your partners wisely. Understand roles and responsibilities. Yeah, not every journey is the Three Musketeers, is what you're telling me. Meaning, one for all and all for one. Um,
Yes. And I mean,
yeah,
if you don't, so, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no. I was going to say this is very common. You know, I work in channel technology, so we are. I guess the best way you can describe it, if you're not familiar with it, is that if you're familiar with insurance companies, you can call State Farm, Geico, Allstate, and all the insurance companies you see on television here in the States, and you can buy your insurance directly through them, or you can call XYZ insurance company, who's a broker, who has relationships with every one of those companies, and then says, hey, Vic, you want to put your insurance through this company because I did a portfolio analysis for you, and this is where you're going to get the best deal and the best coverage and the best service. And that broker gets paid by the provider, not by me. Well, we deal the same in technology. And there are 15,000, 18,000 agents alone just in the United States. It's a recurring business. We're paid by the providers. We provide a high level of service. But I find that in conversations with people that ran out and started, so they were doing inside sales for, let's say, a Genesis or a Five9 or an AT&T or Verizon, and they're not happy with the comp package and or the leadership styles or their earnings opportunity or the potential. Go out, you hang a shingle, you become part of the solution distribution ecosystem, and you go out and eat what you kill, so to speak.
Yeah.
I see lots of partnerships where, and because it's so sales minded, there's not an appropriate value placed on the entirety of all the roles. Some people are just like, if you don't sell anything, you're worthless. Well, what about the guy that wrestles down legal and finance and runs accounting and deals with people? I mean, like without all of those things, the company falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else needs to run a strategy. What products should we sell? Which ones are trending? Which one's hot in the market? You know, what's the biggest ROI? Where are the customers going to win most? Where are our competencies, right? And so all of those things are necessary, and necessary to apply value towards all of those things, because ultimately you get there. But where you have partners not doing anything, that's
Yeah.
typically the biggest problem.
Well,
And
yes.
when did you realize that, you were in it and you're getting 25%, but maybe you made a bad decision?
Well, the first time I brought it up, I was told, "Hey, I'm a physician. My time is worth more than you, so it's normal."
Mm,
So there
okay.
was no empathy or willingness
Okay.
to have harmony. And so, and I think I was I guess I was younger and naive. I didn't really know. I didn't know a governing board existed that much. I
Yeah.
should have. You should have been a member of the governing board, having maybe a couple percentage. That would have been a good structure. But he didn't want to be in operation. So when you start a business, you don't want to be in operation. You have to have a role that fits the actions you want to take, right?
Yep.
And so that was the beginning of a miscommunication, because when you don't solve the silent tension in a team, it grows. And when you
Mm-hmm.
enter the shadow, when it's more stressful, when the pressure is high, well, these little unresolved frustration explode. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened. So when we scaled, I was doing sourcing and selling and negotiation and kind of logistics, but not the conformity side of things. So I was the only one really at the center of everything. And every meeting I had to kind of brief the team of what's going on, in this new model that is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I was really reactive because I was drained, with all the pressure and everything else. And so I have my part of responsibility in that conflict, where I didn't see how in the shadow I was, and that brought out some reactivity in me that sparked what is,
Yeah.
and
Not a good
so
mixture.
Exactly.
What were some of the key decisions you guys made along the way that made it possible to go from 0 to 70 plus million in revenue?
So we took a big risk, and how it happened is, so like I said, we didn't invest any money in the business, so it's not like we could gamble on purchasing something and then reselling it, So what happened is I felt like while everybody was rushing into mask were too easy to copy, and I thought nitrile glove was as equally important as a mask for the medical supply chain.
Uh-huh.
But it was very hard to copy a nitrile glove. You cannot make nitrile, right? And I explored that. I eventually found a guy on Alibaba selling router, but then he said he knew someone with gloves. And so I brought it to my partners. I say, look, we could buy that, but we had to give a deposit on a $450,000 purchase. And none of them really wanted to do that. But I decided it was worth it because we had started to talk with the government and we knew there was demand. So I put all my savings there basically to keep the products on hold. Was able to close a first $1.6 million deal with the government because it was a crazy COVID moment where I was able to be paid in advance, was able
Yeah.
to finish the order. And that was the pivotal moment that gave us kind of the head start. But it didn't even work the first time because by the time they had received the money, I didn't know an international wire takes 5 days. And during COVID, it was even worse, right? I remember because the agent that was selling router, it became a meme internally a little bit, right? And I'm saying this lovingly, but he was always saying, I'm stressful, the money's not there. And so that became our mantra for the whole journey.
Yeah.
I'm stressful. Yeah, we've been stressful for the whole time for sure. And by the time we got the money, we couldn't buy these gloves anymore. They had to be properly packaged, certified. There were no more charter plane. The government wanted to cancel our contract. And I was able to convince them to hold on to it. We put it on a boat. We changed supplier. We negotiated directly with a factory. We developed our own white label and got the first order through. And that created that bridge of trust. And so after that, we were
Yes.
invited on invitation only tenders. We're able to win a $17 million 35 and eventually expand outside of that.
Amazing. And it was only gloves at the time?
Only gloves. Well, then, we took a few opportunities in gowns, but we were mostly a glove company.
Okay. Unbelievable. Right place, right time, and a right amount of risk applied for the reward. Just fantastic.
Yeah, some luck, some risk, some flair, I guess. There's a
Yeah,
bunch of
no doubt about it.
but there's
Well, they
luck
all need
definitely.
to intersect, right?
Exactly.
So we walked through very quickly, but this is a place where I really want to spend some time. What did the exit process look like for you?
So
Did everybody exit?
no, just me.
Just you.
So
Okay.
it started with the conflict, right? So they wanted us to have equal shares, and so I decided to sell them 5% of my shares. Already, that was how it started, and so we kind of let go of the commission agreement. We bundled it into an exit plus selling a value for the share. So I took out a couple million, I think after tax, like a bit over 3 million. And then at the end of that year, I made the full exit and got the rest of the money. But it was in inventory mostly. So the exit process dragged on until 2024, actually.
Okay.
And there were a bunch of issues in the process. So we had a warehouse fire that wiped out all the inventory. And then a bunch of
Holy
other
cow.
crazy stories in between. But yeah, so my exit was, north of the 10 figure ish before
Yeah.
taxes. But in reality, I took out way less than that because of all the bumps in the road and the two-step exit process.
Amazing. What surprised you most through this exit process?
Well, what surprised me the most is how emotional it is. And how many people need to be involved just to navigate that, and how the bias of these people can also influence, and how it's important to be clear on expectation, especially when you sell to your partners, where I thought we had a deal, but then it was misunderstood, and so it didn't really resolve the issue, right? So it dragged on, and that cost us way more than anything else. Like, it led to a $5 million fraud. We eventually, at some point, I signed a $300 million contract with a group in Texas. When the market crashed, they were able to get out of it. And so, just the fact that we weren't united as a team of leader made it very hard to navigate the risk-taking decision of running a business in a crisis time. And so that was the bigger cost to me.
Did you have obviously lawyers, bankers, people involved in the big exit?
Yes, we were fortunate to have a good accounting firm with fiscal specialist, and we had a mediator to help us negotiate and kind of see that the discussion was healthy and constructive.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of different people around us. We also had onboarded a fractional CEO, which is a weird title, but because we were so inexperienced, we wanted to hire someone that had run a business for 25 years to be a couple of days a week with us and kind of get to know and understand the reality of what we were building, with the hope of him steering us into a place of focus that would create a business that would last more than 5 years. And Neobex is still alive to this day, right? So
that's fantastic. What is Neobex doing right now? Same thing?
Kind of same thing, but they're closer to a distributor, and they've pivoted a bit more in the industrial side of supplies.
Okay, cool. Hey, a lot of founders hit emotional walls during the process. Whether it be frustration, anxiety, stress, etc. What do you think most founders and entrepreneurs get wrong about the mental expectations and the management of those things along the way?
So, to me, it comes down to 3 emotions that founders need to pay attention to. And I call that the shadow of entrepreneurship. It's uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness. And so these are the root cause of startup failure. This is what undermines your decision-making process and eventually makes you become reactive, makes you lose your vision, your capacity to adapt, and eventually sink your business. And so how it plays out is when you create a business, you're full of hope. You know kind of where you're going. You have your business plan. If you're lucky, you're one of the, I don't know, I'm one out of how many you said originally, but a few of them know kind of what they're doing. But do they really know? They know, but when they approach the market, they're going to enter an uncertainty at some point, because when they rub their plans against reality, they're going to have doubt. I still have doubt. It's just normal, and there's no exoneration from that, but you can learn to navigate that doubt so that it doesn't increase into a fear of failure. And so you enter the market, you doubt, you start thinking you might fail, you start realizing that failing means more than just losing money or losing time. It means losing a part of your identity because you became that founder, right? And then you can eventually step down to unworthiness, or what we call the imposter syndrome. And why did I ever decide I was worthy of doing a business that would succeed? How can I compete against Google? Who am I? The kind of self-doubt that creeps in. And that's what eventually will bring you to the crossroad of failure, where you either choose to let go of growth and anchor yourself in courage and really follow your intuition. And then you will redefine success, and you will pivot your business, pivot your role in the business, or you become a fallen hero and you become spiteful, angry, a victim mindset. And 98% of first-time founders fail. So that is the norm. And if we don't learn to change that culture of entrepreneurship, of building from within instead of just chasing trends, then we're all going to be experiencing failure that is not serving, failure that is destructive. I'll pause there.
You didn't, you exited for a very specific reason, but I think the outcome turned out to be very good for you. Certainly financially, and sounds like you got a lot of lessons along the way that you're able to navigate through. And now you're coaching folks on this journey. A true entrepreneur, by the definitions I've read, researched, and believe, has an exit in mind the day they start the business. Right? A true entrepreneur is building something to create a worth, to build a business without themselves in it, to generate a certain cash flow and multiple in value for that business, to ultimately sell it.
Well, I somewhat agree, but I also disagree.
Okay.
But I'll let you finish your thought.
Yeah. What I was going to say is because I am surrounded by a lot of people in my business who've chosen this business for a lifestyle.
Yeah.
They like to set their own hours. They like to make decisions and be responsible for them. They like to know if they show up today and save $50,000 on supplies, that's $50,000 in their pocket, not $50,000 at the top of the house. And you got a kick in the shorts on the way out. There's nothing wrong with being a business owner. I think that's potentially different than being an entrepreneur.
Yes.
A business owner, and so folks are trying in my business are trying to find their way from, according to my definition, business owners to entrepreneurs, and seeing themselves with an exit because they have so much of their identity and personality wrapped up in the things they do day to day. Their customers become their friends and family. Their employees become their friends and family. And then if you sell, all that's gone. So what did they lose? They didn't lose their business in exchange for a 8 to 12x multiple of EBITDA. They lost their family, their friends, their purpose, etc. I'm interested in how you see that, and I love that you have a different view.
So I think we mostly connect, but I think the core issue you're presenting is that people are confused between a side hustle or being a business person and being an entrepreneur. So I think there's nothing wrong with, hey, I need to supplement my income and I start something on the side. Probably it should be a part-time job sometimes, but sometimes it's a new venture. You think you're going to put a playbook in place. It's going to regenerate some money with AI or whatever. And then you enter the shadow and oops, now you're in the entrepreneur realm. You're no longer in the side hustle realm. And were you meant to go there? Most of the time they weren't. So I think that's why it's also painful for a lot of people. Then you have the businessman. The businessman is a system optimizer. You know how to build a system of wealth creation. These people are, if they have an entrepreneurial drive, would be probably better just buying, reshaping an existing business. Or if they have a very specific understanding on how to create a system of wealth. Let's say they've built a software company before, they know, and then they redo the same thing. That's kind of entrepreneurship, but it could also not be entrepreneurship. It could be just copy pasting business processes. I think the entrepreneurial realm is in the hero journey realm, where you really approach it from a personal transformational standpoint without maybe aiming for that at first, but it really is the process of stepping into the unknown and then discovering that you were holding to false icons that you thought were true about yourself and life in general, and having the opportunity to really test them. And if you don't approach it with that mindset at some point, then you're going to exit your business and think that's the end of the journey and either be miserable or lucky, right? So when I exited my business, I was 31 years old. I had my 3 kids. I thought I had a full life ahead of me, but I didn't transform. I just collected the exit. And then I still felt unworthy. And so I became a serial entrepreneur. And we can go deeper into that later. But I kept the same KPIs of success, just like the sales guy that becomes a manager, but always want to go back on the field to make some sales to pump his number because that's his strength. He's not transforming into a new version, a leadership role or a mentor role, an advisor role, an investor role. These all have a different value hierarchy with different metrics. And so when you pointed out, you sell your business, you become miserable. Well, that's part of the reason why. The other part is because of identity fusion, where you don't take the time to understand that you need anchors of identity outside your business. For me, it was my kid. Being a father in the present moment was an anchor for me that saved me from my business hardship. And I'm saying that there's a more complex and better way to frame it is that we often move from one hat to the other. And, it's not that
Yeah.
you're just an entrepreneur, but the entrepreneurial experience is the uncertainty adventure. And then at some point, especially if you're at the Series A level, then you have to systemize, and entrepreneurs become business people as the
Yes.
business matures. And then they can either stay a business people and they're happy in that comfort zone, or they can try to really go outside their comfort zone and embark on another journey, right? That's my distinction. I don't know if what
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think.
No, I don't think we're far off. I think we're pretty closely aligned. Although I did put a hard line in the sand that an entrepreneurial does not fear the exit. A true
No,
entrepreneur does not fear the exit, actually welcomes the exit, because there's always that evolution of the
exactly.
next piece. Purpose is vital to life.
Yeah.
You have to be able to wake up in the morning, rub your eyes, put your feet on the ground, and feel like you have a purpose. Not one that you dread, a chore that's different, just an absolute purpose. For me, my family, my friends, we are new grandparents now. We have our very first grandchild. It brings a whole new level of life into our family, which is just incredible. But I mean, for anybody listening, find something that you think you're going to have fun with and do for the rest of your life, and don't worry about making money at it. Because if you're having a great time and you're successful at it, the money's going to come anyway. But I mean, this podcast, Phil, is that for me? Like, what am I going to do when my business journey's done? How am I going to stay in touch talking to interesting people? I run into a lot of interesting people in my business. It's
Yeah.
full of life. And if I shut down that day-to-day interaction, how am I going to get that? How am I going to talk to a guy who's an 8-time world champion in extreme long-range shooting, who's going to tell me about the azimuth of the earth and how that impacts a shot at 2 miles? Like, I'm picking up so much value and information, and the brain is going, and the interactions are great. And someday you and I might be sitting in a studio somewhere doing this. I like to carry this on to doing this, having live and interaction. But for now, we're on Riverside, and this is great. And I don't feel like you're north of the border, so to speak. I mean, the technology, wonderful in doing it. But I'm highlighting this point for my friends and colleagues that might be listening, and for anybody out there who's an entrepreneur, about really identifying your life outside of your grind and your hustle. So many people, but that business becomes their absolute identity. And my business right now, private equity is flooding it with interest and money, and the multiples are incredible. And the business opportunity and the CAGR on the new opportunity is just incredible and unbelievable. But most people who have run this business for 18 to 24 years, they get a blank stare in front of them. And these are not young people, Phil. Okay. Someone comes in mind who's in their 70s and gets a blank stare, like almost you could see them thinking out loud, what will I do?
Yeah.
What will my purpose be? Why, I have all the money I need. It's not like if I get a check for 50 million bucks, I'm not going to do anything different than I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Different when you're 31, you get a check for 50 million bucks. You think there's a lot of stuff you're going to do differently. You're in your 70s, you got your houses, you got your grandkids, you got your cars, you've gone any vacation you want. What's another 50 in the bank? Money you're going to leave to the next generation?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I understand it, but, for people who are struggling with that, do you have any thoughts or pearls of wisdom or experience on how to help people navigate that personality conflict or that crisis of identity?
Yeah. Well, the first word that came to me was ikigai. It's a Japanese word. Maybe you've heard of it. It means basically a reason to get up in the morning. And so
Okay.
that is a good expression of purpose because it's also tied to action, and it's the reverse of retirement. Retirement, if you do it just for vanity reason, I think it's self-destructive at some
Yeah.
point. But if you compare it to a retirement where you embrace your role as a grandfather, and
Mm-hmm.
it is a new journey for you where you get to discover yourself through a different roles and again different metrics of success, it is very enriching because it's a form of a hero journey with a different level of risk than entrepreneurship. There's
Mm-hmm.
very few experiences that are as intense as entrepreneurship that you really have to live to understand. I think parenthood is one, and I have never been to war. What I would expect going to war is another
Yeah.
transformative, unique experience, and that's where most people fail is they approach the crossroad of transformation and they don't embrace it. And I think that's also where we align when you say entrepreneurs are not afraid of the exit. Well, they're not afraid of finishing their journey, whereas the business person will have identity fusion with their role of system
Mm-hmm.
optimizer and title and all of that. It's less creative,
Yeah.
right? As an identity. So it starts with having a bigger understanding of who you are, why you do what you do, that extends beyond your current role, which you seem to have that level of clarity that you have something to learn and you have something that nourishes you through the activity of podcasting, and that can become an anchor to help you in the other journey, or it becomes a whisper that invites you to transform and become something else
Yeah.
that is expressed through podcasting.
Yeah.
And so that's an intuitive attunement
Something to
process.
learn, but also something to give.
Yeah.
Because if I can take my time to do things like schedule podcasts, record podcasts, work to edit podcasts. My son's working with me now, handles all the shorts, other scheduling, lots of other technologies we're getting ready to deploy. It's a lot of fun, and putting it out in a quality product where somebody can consume it and get that same pearl that I get, that same advice from Phil that might carry them to the next spot, or that same
Yeah.
perspective from Lorraine, who was on yesterday. I feel like that's something to give. So I can be fishing for people, catch in a few and share the meal,
Yeah.
right?
I
I
love
can
that.
share
And
the
I
meal.
agree.
And
Yeah.
I come from an Italian family. We cooked a lot of food. We shared a lot of meals. Like we fed a lot
I
of
eat a lot
people.
of food personally.
And we still do it. Hey, you
Yeah.
worked across AI, biotech, defense tech. How do you choose the ventures that you get involved in now?
So now I choose them from a place of intuition. And it took me a lot of time to discover the power of that. Um, how I got into these other roles was so when I finally fully exited my first company, it was 2021, right? So that January 2022, I
Mm-hmm.
began another chapter. The conflict had planted the seed of unworthiness in me that I didn't know at the time. And so that's what fueled my serial entrepreneurship. I needed to prove myself that I could repeat the success kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spread myself in a bunch of different things. But I mostly invested my time in a nanotechnology company called Prometheum, which were amazing. And I felt like it was a way to reconnect with my will to create an impact company because it
Okay.
was air purification and air pollution kills lots of people. And I also thought that market timing would be good and natural from an ICP standpoint, where it probably would appeal to the same kind of people I was selling, like governments and things like that, because it's a new air purification technology and we just had a
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, right? But then what happened is the market was very closed. They were waiting for standards to be changed. They had been sold crap during COVID, and we couldn't get to market. And and so what happened is that we eventually pivoted again. The company found product market fit, got a letter of intents from big companies worth hundreds of millions. But my two technical founders burnt out and quit, and so we couldn't reproduce the tech. And after restructuring the business, then I had the call from my partner that we had a warehouse fire that burnt out the rest of my exit. And so at that point, I hit a rock bottom moment
Okay.
where I discovered I was forced to stop chasing growth. And I decided to let the world burn, is how it felt to me, and just not care at all. And I didn't even want to chase growth in my other buckets. I was always trying to be the father of the year playfully for my kids
Mm-hmm.
to keep that top of mind. But then even that was not serving me. And I discovered the power of anchoring as in the present moment. I took my three kids to Cancun, who were I think 3, 5, and 7 at the time. And so we spent a week just being a father, and it was the beginning of a discovering process. And so I'm saying this to explain why I chose STS Capital and the rest, because 2024 was for me a year where I decided to stop aiming and just listen to my intuition. And so I decided to go with STS. At first, I went for real AI dynamics because I felt I had something to discover in AI. And so I became an AI trainer. Then he offered me to do the go-to-market for his Trelais Venture Studio. And I said, well, why not? I'm going to go do that because I wanted to learn about software. Then he introduced me to someone at STS Capital that wanted a M&A advisor to help, expand their customer base. I joined. And so I kind of stumbled in these next role, following what I felt like was something that I needed to learn. And eventually I got asked to create a private equity fund for Wide Range Capital. And I felt like I need to do that again for the same reason that I had something to learn and discover by doing this. And now, by doing my TED Talk work and a personal growth program with my now Chief Transformation Officer, that gave me the ability to take these little nuggets of wisdom all over the place and make them make sense to me and really connect with my intuition. And so at that point, I decided to leave the private equity fund, even though, I would have made a lot of money, and really push through the Courage Compass company's mission of changing the culture for entrepreneurship, sharing the frameworks I had learned to lower the failure rate and, make entrepreneurship a true hero journey kind of thing. Yeah.
Love it. You know who Kevin O'Leary is, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank. I think a fellow Canadian, right?
Yeah. I saw him on the Diary of a Serial, I think a few weeks ago. Yeah, he's a smart guy.
He talks, you talk about intuition. He uses a similar term. He talks about instinct. He asked him about, how he makes most of his decisions now. He said, pure instinct. And he said, but don't mistake that for ignorance. He said, I have instinct now because I've been doing this and challenging myself for 30 plus years. I've made the mistakes. I've gone out and had to figure it out. I've had to rescue businesses from the bottom. He goes, I've earned my own instinct. And so now, because I have all this collection of experience, I can trust my instinct. What you just described to me is exactly that. You find a spot where you feel like you've got some growth, the opportunity, you go in, you dive in because you're an expansive kind of human. And you grow inside that with the confidence that I'll figure it out because heck, I figured out the last thing. And that means I'll figure out the next thing because there's a repeatability to that. Right. And so now you have your intuition to lean on based on all the history of all those experiences. But somebody without all that experience really doesn't, the intuition would be voodoo, it wouldn't be backed by anything.
Yeah. So there's this term called interoception, and it's about the emotional reaction that you feel in your body.
Okay.
But it can mean anything, right? So is it a stress reaction or is it an intuitive whisper telling you to look at something else? And so that interoception clarity is the first step to being able to operationalize your intuition. And so that comes with, first, I think there's 3 ways you can cut years out of your growth as a leader and as an entrepreneur. It's to see it, learn to navigate it, and then integrate it. And just like the instinct that Mr. Wonderful said. So if you don't have the words to understand what you're looking at, it's going to take you a lot of time to really see that. And so that's part of the reason why I decided to put the shadow of entrepreneurship frame. You don't have to have emotional intelligence across the board. You need to know these 3 emotions. And so when you start to notice that, then you start to see, okay, I made that decision because I was fearful. Oh, I made the decision because otherwise I could have lost my sense of worth, And there's different lens that you need to have in your toolkit that you can either learn with years or you can learn with trust and
From
what I'm
others'
dealing with.
experience. Yeah. Well, you
Yeah,
talk about entrepreneurial shadows. Can we unpack that for a little bit?
for sure.
Yeah. Let's do that.
The entrepreneurial shadow is, like I said earlier, it's the uncertainty, fear, and unworthiness. I've unpacked a good deal of it in the sense that it is really what triggers emotional reactivity. And if I look at myself at the beginning of 2024, where I was learning stillness and aimlessness as a form of strategy, or however you want to frame that, I was still a bit reactive. I knew I was reactive with Prometheum when it was tough. I knew I was having a hard time being a visionary, and I'm a strong visionary and strategic thinker. That's my strength. But then because I was in the shadow, I wasn't able to. I was always reacting, firefighting, treating, managing an emergency. And the fact that I was a serial entrepreneur on top of that with, only early stage company for some reason, because that's what I love to do. It was always a fire after a fire, and every little fire was fueling a lot the shadow. And I got stuck, and that brought me in the failure zone, right? And so it's seeing that relation between that trigger, that emotion as a trigger, that really allows you to pause and say, all right, I'm not in an emotional state that will allow me to make a good decision right now, so I should fix that first. And so that is what I call letting the world burn. Mm-hmm. And then you anchor yourself outside of business. And now that you have identity safety, you can rise above the shadow and you can start making better decisions. And there's a bunch of tools over how to navigate uncertainty that I discovered by looking at my own decision patterns. So I can go into that if you want, or you.
Yeah, let's do it. No, open it up. Let's go.
So if you go in the shadow, right, the first step is uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to a decision, right? I either do something about it or I don't. And if you are stepping into the fear mode, then you will be overly reactive, and you will want to fix uncertainty in a way that maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should just reconnect with the fact that you had made a right decision. It's just part of the process, right?
Yeah. But if I can jump in real quick, I just want to point out one thing for the audience. Most people feel like when they get that in that spot where they need to make a decision, that making no decision is not a decision, but making no decision is an actual decision.
It is.
And you have to live with the consequences, good, bad, or indifferent, but no decision is an absolute decision. I'm sorry, continue on.
No, I love that. Thank you. And I'll use that as an example, right? So the Courage Compass tool is a way to leverage strategic empathy to get outside your natural thinking style. So if you look at how we naturally think, you can use emergenetics as a tool. I use that a lot in my company to have cognitive diversity. So you have 4 quadrants, right? You have conceptual, yellow, you have relational, red, and you have structural, green, and analytical blue. And so we have a natural tendency to be more comfortable in one of these quadrants. For me, I have a trimodal divergent brain. So I'm 95th percentile conceptual, relational, and I'm strong in logic. And I'm super weak on structure. So I tend to so when I am in the shadow, especially, I'm more attached to my natural thinking style. So what I'll do is I'll go conceptual first, and I'll think about a billion ways to make it work across the next 10 years. And then I'm going to go to my red quadrant, and I'm either going to try to get a partnership in place to take over my responsibility of owning the growth of my business, for example, or I'll ask for feedback from somebody else and eventually get someone that says something different, right? Because everybody has a different opinion. And I'll go back to conceptual, red, yellow. And if I'm lucky, my logic steps in and cuts. And that was all happening subconsciously, which is why I was having issue making decision before. And I didn't understand that. And so if you're uncertain and you know you have these courage comfort zone of decision based on your natural cognitive style, then you can pause, let the world burn, look at what would someone in each of the quadrants decide right now if they were in my shoes. And then you realize that someone with the same IQ, experience, or worth as a businessman would have a whole different reaction to the decision you're about to make, right? And you can use that gap to reconnect with your intuition and decide from that place which quadrant you should step into. And it still happened. There's no exoneration from uncertainty, even if you have all the tools in the world. But it's about how fast you see it, and how well you navigate it so that it doesn't derail you. When I started the Courage Compass company, I felt uncertain at some point about, should I change one of our monuments, and do something else. And then I used that tool and realized, no, I have the right vision. I'm just feeling uncertain. Let's go um, uh, green and actually put the structure in place so that we can get real data. Otherwise, I just stay in my mind and not really build a business, right? And so that's one way to kind of use that.
I love that. Along the way, founders will face burnout.
Yeah.
Right. How did you reset? Maybe when you mentioned quickly retreating to your family and go on a trip.
Yeah.
If that was the one thing that you did that did it for you, congratulations. I know a bunch of people who have been in an elongated burnout, and they stay in the grind for 12 to 18 months and don't even know they're fried.
Yeah.
How do you first suggest people qualify and quantify where they are to recognize they're in burnout? And what are some things that you suggest, whether you've done them or researched them, that people do to reset without losing momentum? Because everybody's going to say, hey, I'm out of here for 6 months, right? That's not practical in most cases. What do you think?
So if I pull my former pharmaceutical hat, so an untreated burnout lasts an average of 2 years, right? So if you need medication, you don't take it, you should get out of it within 2 years. That's the average time it takes. If you want to diagnose yourself, there's a self administrated test called PHQ-9 that you can take. It's I think it's 9 questions, and then you kind of know where you fit in the depression scale from a subjective standpoint. For entrepreneurs, I'm building what I call the shadow check ritual, which is the habit of catching how many times a week or a day, if you feel like it, you are in one of the 3 shadow emotion. Because if you catch it fast, then you can navigate it and not let it take over, which will increase all the likelihood of burnout. Because that's what really happens right now. I think it's 5 times more, mental issues, but anxiety and depression amongst founder, because 98% of them fail, and they failed in a destructive way where they don't really grow from it. They just feel broken from it. But if you approach it with the lens of the hero journey, then however broken you become is an opportunity to have wisdom you can share. And when you were saying that sharing in the form of podcasting is nourishing, well, sharing what breaks you is also very nourishing. And it's a unique power that you acquired by the process of entrepreneurship. So this is really the real treasure of it. It's not the money you get out of it. It's pausing, taking the time to understand what you actually learn, and being able to share that with people that might not have broken these internal icons. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It was really insightful. And it sparked something in my brain to go back to the decision-making piece. Because I was thinking about, as you were talking, my brain is processing all that. And I started thinking about, how do I identify? What do I know? Oh, shoot, now I'm faced with another decision. Decision-making is so powerful. And what happens by making decisions, first of all, you recognize that the majority of these decisions you make, they only have a lifespan of a very short period of time. Mm-hmm. Most of the decisions you make are not life-threatening, life-ending. Your building's on fire. Do I jump out the window? It's 8 stories. Might I land on something soft? I'm with you. That's a life or death decision you're going to make, very, very risk. But most decisions in business about navigating things, you do get an opportunity to change courses after you've made that decision. And so my belief as you're navigating your entrepreneurial journey is to be bold in decision making. Make them well advised, backed by data. Make them thoughtful decisions, but never be afraid to make one and charge it and put a massive action plan behind it. And also know when to evaluate it and make another one.
Yeah.
Right? Make another one, because you don't want to die on the hill because you made a decision and this is the one I made and I'm going to ride this ship down to the bottom of the ocean. Know that in that decision comes feedback, whether it be verbal, whether it be consumer or customer reaction or employee reaction, whatever's going on, the decision affects in. But making decisions is so powerful for the entrepreneur, for anybody really in life. But be willing to make the next one. Because people said to me once, I met people as a person, I could remember it. They said, every time I come to you for a thought on something, you seem to be able to give me a couple of options pretty quickly. Like, where do you get the confidence to do that? And I said, well, because if you come back to me and tell me it didn't work, I'm going to help you come up with another one. It's like, I know we just got to, I know we have to execute. We have to try something. Through experience and instinct and knowledge and a lot of failure, I'm getting better as I get older at usually picking a lane that's pretty good. Not all the time, but I've got a fair track record at it. You get better by keep doing it. It's like going to the gym, doing reps, right? The muscles get bigger, eat the right foods, you get healthier day after day after day after week. Making business decisions, you learn the right ones to make, you make more of them. You learn the ones you made that aren't so good, you don't repeat them again. Right.
Yep.
And so I tied back to that, and it really, I was, the decision piece was just ringing through. But last question I have for you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil. You wanted to jump in
Maybe
with
a
something?
comment, because when you said about bold action, I really believe in that too. But I think it comes more from alignment than anything else. Because if you are aligned in what you're doing, then you don't mind making mistakes all that much, because you're serving a bigger purpose of maybe becoming someone. Maybe you want to, I wanted to become a good entrepreneur. Well, a good entrepreneur doesn't mean I want to become the best CEO of Courage Compass Company. Courage Compass Company is a tool making me evolve into being a best entrepreneur, right?
Understood.
So it's that perspective and depth of understanding of who and why. And then people often don't have activation energy. When you boil water, well, there's a 1 degree difference between it boiling and just being hot, right? And so you have to pump the energy to a certain level of commitment and boldness if you want your team to feel it, to be aligned with you, and actually create result.
I love that. I love that. I love that visual, the 1 degree.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to save the last question for a minute, but I want to ask you, is there anything you think we should be talking about today that's deep in your soul that we have not yet talked about, that you said, hey, man, I don't want to get off this podcast until we talk about this topic? Very important to me. Is there anything like that we haven't hit?
Well, I don't know if I think we've covered great things. I mean, one thing that I'm building that might be helpful for your audience is an entrepreneur readiness score. So if you have an entrepreneur that wants to see their gap in inner management, it's free. It's going to be released soon. I don't know when the podcast is going to be released. Or if you are a business person and you want to embark on a journey, you want to know, okay, well, where is my potential gap in entrepreneurial leadership? That might be something interesting for your audience to know.
Well, that's great. Well, when this episode goes live, and it won't be for a few weeks, the first thing that will appear in the description section of this episode will be all the ways to get in touch with Phil Neal, all the things you offer, right? So those links will be there, and there'll be links back to this episode, whether you're on Instagram, X, TikTok for shorts, and YouTube shorts. So people will not have difficulty finding you. If you have a link to some resources that are specific, you can give them to me. They'll go in the description section as well. But I'd like to end on this one question, and I put it last on my list for a person. What is often the one piece of advice you give to most entrepreneurs that they absolutely don't want to hear?
To follow their intuition is a big one, because they're so afraid of failing, and it's so much easy to disempower yourself by listening to a playbook of Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozy, Gary Vee, whatever, whoever the operational influencer of the day is. And then it didn't work for a technical reason. But if you really, really acknowledge that you decided to be an entrepreneur and this is your hero journey moment, then you should have a governing board to help you reduce your mistake, but not prevent failure. You need to follow your intuition all the way through.
Going to be failure. Well, that's great and sound advice. Phil, the quickest hour and 10 minutes of my day for sure. Can't believe I've spent that much time. I could talk to you for another few hours. I thank you so much for taking time today to come on and tell your story and share your wisdom and your experience. Congratulations on all your success and the continued success. I'll be looking at those links as well so I can stay in tune and in touch with what you're doing. And I've got friends and colleagues that might need your help and services and benefit from what you're doing. So I'll take a deeper look at it when we're all done. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, Vic. It was great. I had a great time too.
Great. Have a great day.
You too.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.